do it then.
You're just in time. We're going to do U.S. history. We're going to find this handout, Panama Canal. You're also in time to watch some of your classmates leave the classroom if they don't quieten down, because they have been outrageously loud for 20 minutes. Okay, trying to check homework, trying to hand stuff out, get them to be quiet. They don't care. Getting close to Christmas, get a little excited. Got a test coming up. Won't do great on the test. Will whine about why they didn't do great on the test. Although it never dawned on them had they paid attention in class, perhaps, just perhaps, they would have done better.
Coach Osborne,
Yes, sir.
are we going to do a review for this test?
No, I'm not ever doing another review. Ever.
Okay.
Ever, never, ever.
Okay.
Ever. Ever.
Ever, ever,
Ever.
ever. Okay. He's got it.
Unless, I decide to. All right. I don't know if we'll have time. I think we will. I think we'll have time to do a review this morning. Okay. All right. Panama Canal. The Panama Canal is a 48-mile-long man-made waterway that crosses the Isthmus of Panama. It uses a number of locks, and I'm going to show you a film, which I'll give you the link to, how the locks work. It's actually, you think about the time that this thing was designed and built, this is quite an amazing structure, to be honest with you. So they use a number of locks on each side to lower and raise the ship to allow them to pass between the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. And the reason they had to use the locks was because once the French actually gets down there and starts building the Panama Canal. And they discover that the Pacific Ocean sets something like 20 meters higher than the Atlantic Ocean. So just digging a tunnel across Panama, which is very mountainous, would not work.
Because the water would just fall.
Yeah, because the water was flowing down, and it just wouldn't work. So they could do that in yellow fever. Remember, this is in the late 1800s, and yellow fever is running rampant, and a number of their workers are dying from yellow fever and stuff also. So they kind of abandoned the project after a while. Okay, so the Panama Canal was built to lower the distance, the cost, and the time it took for ships to carry cargo between the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. Before the canal, ships would actually have to go around the entire continent of South America. So you think about a ship leaving New York to San Francisco would have to go all the way down and around the United States, and then down around South America and back up the coastline to get to San Francisco. Okay, so that was quite a haul. It added a bunch of miles and cost to it. Okay, so a ship traveling from New York to San Francisco would save about 8,000 miles and 5 months of travel because of the Panama Canal. Okay, so the Panama Canal was a huge boost to the world trade and to the economy. Okay, so why a canal in Panama? Okay, the Isthmus of Panama was chosen for the site of the canal because it was a very narrow strip of land between the two oceans. And although the canal was still a huge engineering project, this was the easiest place to build it. Now, the French begins working on the canal in 1881, but failed due to disease and construction difficulties. Okay, back again, you don't think about one of the oceans being that much higher than the other
20 meters.
ocean. I mean, that's quite a bit. That's quite a bit higher. In 1904, the United States began to work on the canal. It took about 10 years of hard work, but the canal officially opened August 15th, 1914. Okay?
Dang good.
thousands of workers from around the world helped to build the canal. At one point, there was as many as 45,000 men involved in the project. The United States funded the canal, and the lead engineers were from the U.S. Okay, they included John Stevens, who convinced President Teddy Roosevelt that the canal would have to be elevated, William Gorez, who came up with ways to fight diseases by killing mosquitoes, and George Goethel, who headed up the project from 1907. Somebody in the last class said, "You think those two guys were made fun of because of their names?" And I went, "Well, they probably were, and they were probably about 10 times smarter than their classmates, and they probably got picked on." And then one day, the guys that beat them up every day came and said, "Could I have a job?" Because it's usually the guy that you always picking on because he's so smart is the guy that ends up owning the company that you go to work for. So you might want to keep that in mind as you're being mean to your classmates. Building the canal was not easy. Workers had to battle disease, mudslides, poisonous snakes, scorpions, and poor living conditions. The completion of the canal took some of the best engineering skills and innovation of the time. Okay? There was 3 major construction projects involved in making the canal. Okay? They had to build the locks, okay? And locks on each side of the canal lift and lower boats a total of 85 feet. So it takes them up 85 feet, then they go across a man-made lake, and then it lowers them 85 feet.
It's literally like
Yeah.
electric, and it like fires it and lowers
It's
it.
water. It works off of water. I'm going to show you a film how it works. It's really quite amazing.
Wait, so they start in the Pacific, and that's
Well, it depends on which way they're going.
uh,
Yeah, it depends on which way they're going. If they're coming from the Pacific, headed to the Atlantic, yeah. And if the other way, but it works either way. It's not just a one-way thing. It'll work. It'll get you there either way. Yeah. The locks are immense. Each lock is 110 feet wide, 1,050 feet long. They have huge concrete walls and giant steel gates. The steel gates are over 6 feet thick and 60 feet tall. And in some places, they have 2 of those things. So they have to have a 12-foot lock there. Okay. Digging the Cubra Cut. This section of the canal had to be dug through the mountains of Panama. Dealing with the landslides and the fallen rocks made this the most difficult and dangerous part of the canal's construction. And then building the Gatun Dam, the designers of the canal decided to make a large artificial lake through the center of Panama. To do this, they had to construct a dam on the Gatun River, creating the lake. Okay, and you'll see that because once they get it up, they had to have water there for it to go to in order to get to the other locks to go back down. Ships traveling through the canal from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean would first go through the locks and be raised 85 feet. Then they would travel through the narrow Cubra Cut to Gatun Lake. After crossing the lake, they would travel through the additional locks that would lower them to the Pacific Ocean. Yes, ma'am.
We went on a type of riverboat, like all around Lewis and Clark's trail, and we went through a lot of the locks, and it was so weird, just seeing being kind of raised or
Oh, yeah.
lowered. It was so weird.
Yeah. And the size ships that it will do that to is amazing. Yes, sir.
so Panama was just pretty small.
Well, in this area, it's only, I think it's 48 miles or something.
So they had to dig 48 miles of.
Yeah, well,
cut.
yeah, they cut through and then they had to put the man-made lake in and all that, so yeah. So it was quite an undertaking. But they did pick this area because it was the more narrow of the areas. Okay? In 1999, the United States transferred control of the canal to the country of Panama. Today, the canal remains an important part of the international trade. Around 12,000 ships travel through the canal each year. carrying over 200 million tons of cargo. Around 9,000 people currently work for the Panama Canal. Anybody know who the president was, the U.S. president, when they decide to turn the Panama Canal over to the Panama people? Well,
Teddy Roosevelt.
no, actually built it.
Eisenhower?
No, it didn't get transferred over until 1999.
Donald Trump.
Okay, it didn't get transferred over to 1999.
Clinton.
But
No.
all of this goes. You got to understand the way government works. You don't do something, and then next week it takes place. Okay, especially something like this. This is a few years down the road.
President Bush.
No, but that's a good guess. It was before Bush.
Bill
Bill.
It
Cleveland?
was before Bill.
Cleveland.
Wait, what year did you
Dude,
say?
that's way back.
After Washington, who had no idea that
Lincoln.
Panama was there.
Lincoln.
George
Okay,
Washington.
Teddy Roosevelt is the president when it's built. Why would Lincoln have given it away? I mean, come on, people. More of that logic here.
Teddy
Franklin
Roosevelt.
D.
No, it wasn't Franklin. It was after Franklin.
Ben Franklin.
Before Reagan.
I don't know.
Before Reagan.
Oh, it's
You don't know your
Reagan?
presidents, do you?
Jimmy K.
Carter.
Elon Musk.
Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter?
I was about
Oh,
to say that.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Me too.
If anybody is stumped by the name Jimmy Carter, you really need to start paying attention in class. You do not realize Jimmy Carter was one of our presidents. You really need to start paying attention. Okay? All right. The canal costs about $375 million to construct. This would be over $8 billion in today's dollars.
8 billion?
Traveling through the canal is not cheap. The average toll is around $54,000. That's a one-way trip, just to go through. With some tolls up over $300,000, depending on how big the ship and how much cargo you are carrying through. Okay? But that is still a lot cheaper than having to go all the way around South America because of the mileage, the fuel, the time, all that comes into play. Okay?
Seriously?
All right.
More than-
All right. Thanks. We'll talk to you later.